$85,714. That is the exact number where compounding explodes for Carla. For Diana, the same explosion does not happen until $342,857. Same market, same 7% return, same calendar year, completely different number. And neither of those numbers is $1 million. Here's what nobody tells you about compound interest. It does not switch on at a milestone. It switches on at a ratio. And that ratio is different for every single person watching this. Meet Diana, 34 years old, software project manager, $82,000 a year. She saves $2,000 every month, which is more than 90% of American households manage. She has done everything right for 8 straight years, and she is now convinced that compounding is a lie. Meet Carla, 32 years old, dental hygienist, $54,000 a year. She saves $500 a month. 1/4 of what Diana saves. Carla crossed the explosion point 3 full years before Diana did. Diana is not behind. Diana's finish line moved. Run the numbers, and you will see something the entire personal finance internet has been quietly getting wrong. The reason this matters is not academic. It is the reason people quit. The Vanguard, How America Saves report tracked 4.6 million retirement accounts. The median balance at the end of 2025 was $44,115. Not the average, the median. Half of every American retirement saver in that data. Set has less than $44,000. That number sits in the flattest, deadest part of the curve. It is the stretch where your money genuinely does almost nothing. You put in $12,000 a year, your balance climbs by $13,000, and you sit there wondering what exactly you are paying the market for. And that is precisely where people stop. Dalbar has measured this behavior for over 30 years. In 2024, the S&P 500 returned 25.05%. The average equity fund investor earned 16.54%. That is a gap of 848 basis points in a single year. Not from fees, from behavior. Investors pulled money out of equity funds in every single quarter of that year, and the largest outflows landed right before the largest run-up. People do not lose money because the math failed them. They lose money because they left the room before the math arrived. So the real question is not whether compounding works. It works. The question is when it starts working for you. Specifically, what number in your account on your actual statement is the moment your money starts pulling harder than you do? Most people are told $100,000. Some are told $1 million. Here is what the data shows. Let us keep this fair. 3 people, same country, same market, same 7% average annual return, same starting point of $0. The only thing that changes is how much each one puts in. Carla is 32. She is a dental hygienist earning $54,000 a year. After rent, her car, and groceries, she moves $500 a month into a low-cost index fund. That is $6,000 a year. Nothing dramatic. She set the transfer up on a Tuesday and has not touched it since. Diana is 34. She is a software project manager earning $82,000 a year. She maxes her 401k contribution and adds to a taxable brokerage on top. Her total is $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. 4 times what Carla puts in. Maya is 28. She earns $48,000 a year as a lab technician. She saves $800 a month, which is $9,600 a year, and every dollar of it sits in a high-yield savings account paying 4%. She has never bought a single share of anything. She is, on paper, the most disciplined saver of the 3. Now watch what happens. After 8 years, Carla has roughly $61,000. Diana has roughly $245,000. Diana is 4 times ahead, exactly as you would expect. If you stopped the video here, you would say Diana is winning, and you would be right about the dollar amount. But ask a different question. Ask each of them how much. Of last year's growth came from the market instead of from their own paycheck. Carla's $61,000 threw off about $4,200 in returns last year. She contributed $6,000, so the market did 70% of the work of her paycheck. Not there yet. Diana's $245,000 threw off about $17,000. She contributed $24,000, so her market return was 71% of her paycheck contribution. Almost exactly the same ratio as Carla. Read that again. Diana has 4 times the money. Diana is in precisely the same place. That is the part nobody explains. Diana looks 4 times richer and feels 4 times more frustrated because her feeling is not driven by her balance. It is driven by the ratio between what the market gives her and what she gives the market. And when you save 4 times more, you have to build 4 times more before that ratio flips. Maya is a different story entirely, and we will come back to her because Maya's ratio never flips at all. Not at 50,000, not at 200,000, not ever. And she will spend 20 years not understanding why. So here's the setup. 3 savers, 1 market, 1 number that decides when each of them stops pushing and starts riding. That number has a name, it has a formula, and it takes about 9 seconds to calculate for your own account. Most people have never been told it exists. John found it the slow way. 52 years old, 26 years of statements in a filing cabinet, and 1 long Sunday afternoon with a spreadsheet and a calculator. He had spent most of those 26 years believing what everyone believes, which is that at some point the market takes over and the whole thing gets easy. It did happen. It just did not happen anywhere near where he expected. And by the time it did, he had already spent 4 years quietly assuming he had done something wrong. That afternoon, he found the line in the spreadsheet where market returns first passed his own deposits. It was not $100,000, it was $158,000, and nobody in 26 years had ever told him that number was calculable in advance. Charlie Munger said the hard part of getting rich is the first $100,000. He was right. He was also describing his own arithmetic, not yours. The reason $100,000 became the internet's magic number is simple. At 7%, $100,000 generates $7,000 a year. And $7,000 a year happens to be very close to what a middle-class American saves annually. So for one specific saver, at one specific savings rate, $100,000 is genuinely the crossover. That saver puts away about $583 a month, $7,000 a year. The moment their balance hits $100,000, the market is contributing exactly as much as they are. That is where the number came from. It was never a law of physics. It was one person's division problem that went viral. Watch what happens when you move the savings rate even slightly. Save $400 a month instead. Now you only need $68,571. Save $1,000 a month. Now you need $171,429. Save $2,000 a month like Diana, and the number balloons to $342,857. Same market, same 7%. The finish line moved by $274,000, and nothing about the world changed. Only the person changed. So when a video tells you everything changes at $100,000, what it is really telling you is that everything changed for the guy who made the video. And an entire industry has been built on top of that one number. Carla sat through a webinar in March where a man in a gray suit spent 40 minutes explaining that $100,000 was the gateway, the threshold, the point of no return. He had a slide with a rocket on it. He said the words escape velocity 4 separate times. Then he offered a program for $1,997 that promised to compress the journey from 8 years to 3. Carla did the arithmetic on the back of a napkin during the pitch. $1,997 was 4 months of her contributions. 4 months she would have to make up before she was back, to even chasing a threshold that, for her, was $14,000 lower than the one on his slide. She closed the browser tab. The salesman was not lying about the math. He was selling a universal answer to a personal question, which is a far more profitable business than telling somebody they can work out their own number with a calculator in under a minute. Here is the formula. Write this down because it is the only thing in this video you actually need. Your explosion number equals your annual contribution divided by your expected annual return. That is it. Annual savings divided by return rate expressed as a decimal. Carla saves $6,000 a year. 6,000 divided by 0.07 equals $85,714. That is her number. Diana saves $24,000 a year. 24,000 divided by 0.07 equals $342,857. That is her number. You can do this for yourself right now. Take whatever you put into investments in a year, divide it by 0.07. The answer is the dollar amount where your portfolio starts producing more than you do. Below that number, you are the engine. Above it, the market is the engine, and you are a passenger who occasionally tops up the tank. And here is why this matters more than any milestone. A milestone tells you where you are. A ratio tells you what phase you are in. 2 people at the exact same balance can be in completely opposite phases, and every piece of advice that applies to one is wrong for the other. Carla at $90,000 is past her crossover. Diana at $90,000 is barely a quarter of the way to hers. If you gave them identical advice, you would be wrong at least half the time. This is the part that breaks people's brains, so we are going to go slowly. It takes her about 11 years to get there. Diana, at $24,000 a year, needs $342,857. It takes her about 11 years to get there too. The number of years is nearly identical. The dollar figure is 4 times larger, because the crossover is a ratio, and the ratio does not care how big your numbers are. Now think about what that does to a person psychologically. She hit $100,000 in year 4. She celebrated. And then absolutely nothing happened. Year 5 felt like year 3. Year 6 felt like year 4. Her contributions still dwarfed her returns. She started to wonder if index funds were a scam, if she had picked the wrong fund, if she should have bought real estate, if the people online were lying. She was not doing anything wrong. She had simply been handed somebody else's finish line. There is a version of this that is genuinely dangerous. When a disciplined saver crosses a milestone and feels nothing, the most common response is not to quit saving. It is to change strategy. They move money into something with a story. Individual stocks, leveraged funds, a rental property they do not have time to manage. A friend's business. The 848 basis point gap Dalbar measured in 2024 is exactly this behavior, aggregated across millions of people, not laziness. Impatience dressed up as ambition. The reason compounding feels like an explosion instead of a ramp is that we experience it in doublings. And every doubling adds more than everything that came before it combined. Rule of 72. Divide 72 by your return rate to get your doubling time. At 7%, that is roughly 10.3 years. Start with $100,000 and add nothing at all. In 10 years, you have $200,000. That doubling added $100,000. In 20 years, you have $400,000. That doubling added $200,000. In 30 years, $800,000. That one added $400,000. 30 years in, a single doubling delivers $400,000, which is more than the entire first 2 doublings put together. Same money, same rate, no extra effort. The dollars per year of growth are not linear, and they never were. This is why the last decade before retirement does more damage or more good than the first 2 decades combined. And it is why the phrase, "I'll start investing when I earn more," is the single most expensive sentence in personal finance. You are not delaying a contribution. You are deleting a doubling off the far end. Take Diana's $342,000. If she never adds another dollar, at 7%, that becomes roughly $685,000 in 10 years. $1.37 million in 20 and $2.74 million in 30. In her final 2 years, she was going to contribute $48,000, which is a rounding error next to that. Above your explosion number, your contributions stop being the story, which means the entire game is decided by whether you get there at all. A financial advisor charging 1% is not taking 1% of your money. He is moving your explosion number. Run it. Diana saves $24,000 a year. At a clean 7%, her crossover is $342,857. Take 1% off the top, and her real return is 6%. 24,000 divided by 0.06 equals $400,000. That advisor just raised her finish line by $57,143. That is more than 2 full years of her maximum saving effort. Gone, before you even discuss the compounding she loses on the fee itself. Carla's version is smaller in dollars and identical in shape. Her crossover moves from $85,714 to $100,000. $14,286 added to her climb. For advice she can get free from a target date fund. Now stack a second layer, an expense ratio of 0.75% on an actively managed fund. On top of a 1% advisory fee gives you a real return of 5.25%. 24,000 divided by 0.0525 equals $457,143. That is $114,000 added to Diana's finish line. 4.5 years of her life, saving at full effort, transferred to somebody else's revenue line. And the pitch that sold it to her almost certainly used the word peace of mind. Fees do not shave your returns. Fees relocate your finish line, and they relocate it in the direction that costs you years. Diana actually sat in that meeting. Charcoal suit, red tie, a printed folder with her name on the cover. He walked her through a chart with 2 lines on it, both, going up and to the right, and told her the difference between them was his value. He never once mentioned that his fee changed the arithmetic of when her portfolio would start carrying itself. He talked about downside protection, tax loss harvesting, and behavioral coaching. Every one of those things has real value for some people. None of them appeared anywhere in the calculation he did not show her. Diana asked one question on her way out. She asked what her return would be net of everything. In a normal year, he said 6%, maybe a little under. She wrote it on the folder. That night, she divided 24,000 by 0.06 and understood, for the first time, exactly what she had been offered. She did not sign, but most people in that chair do, and almost none of them have the number in their head to check it against. Come back to Maya, 28 years old, $9,600 a year into a high-yield savings account paying 4%. The most consistent saver of the three. Her explosion number is 9,600 divided by 0.04. $240,000. She will get there. It takes about 18 years. And here is the trap. 4% is not a return, it is a rate. Inflation over that period runs somewhere around 3%. Her real return, the one that buys actual groceries, is closer to 1%. Recalculate at 1%. 9,600 divided by 0.01 equals $960,000. Maya's real crossover point is $960,000. At $9,600 a year, she reaches it in roughly 52 years. She will be 80 years old. That is the cash trap, stated in the only terms that matter. Her account balance grows. Her purchasing power barely moves. The bank. Tell her who opened the account was not lying to her. 4% is 4%. Nobody mentioned that the finish line she was running toward was $960,000 instead of $240,000. And the cruelty of it is that Maya has the best habits of anyone in this video. Better than Diana, far better than most people watching. Discipline in the wrong vehicle does not produce a smaller explosion. It produces no explosion at all. Picture the moment the account was opened. Maya, 23 years old, standing at a counter with a printed pay stub in her hand. The teller was polite and completely honest. He showed her the rate on a laminated card. 4.15% APY, no minimum, FDIC insured up to $250,000. He said the word safe 3 times, and every single time he said it, he was telling the truth. Safe from a market crash, not safe from inflation. Those are 2 different kinds of safe, and no bank has any incentive to explain the difference at the counter. 5 years later, Maya has $48,000 in that account, and a quiet, persistent sense that she is doing well. In nominal dollars, she is. In grocery store dollars, her $48,000 buys roughly what $41,000 bought when she opened it. She has never seen a red number on a statement in her life, and that is exactly the problem, because the loss never shows up as a number. It shows up as a checkout total. There is a specific stretch where people abandon this, and it is not the beginning. Year 1 is exciting. You opened the account. The number went up. You told someone. Year 2 and 3 still feel like progress, because the percentage gains on a small balance look enormous. $2,000 becoming $2,400 is a 20% year, and it feels incredible. The danger window is years 5 through 9. By year 5, your balance is large enough that the percentage moves feel small, and still small enough that the dollar moves feel irrelevant. Carla in year 5 has about $34,000. A 7% year gives her $2,400. She contributed $6,000, so she watches her paycheck do 2. And a half times the work of the entire market and thinks, why am I doing this? That is the exact emotional shape of the quit. Not panic. Not a crash. Boredom plus a nagging feeling of being a sucker. Diana's version arrives later and hits harder because she is putting in $24,000 a year and watching it barely move the needle in relative terms. She has more money and more frustration. Her danger window stretches from about year 6 to year 11. And that is where the millennial friend character enters, because everybody has one. Diana's friend Marcus started investing the same month she did. He put in $800 a month for 6 years, hit roughly $70,000, decided the market was rigged, cashed out, and bought a truck. He was 14 months away from his own crossover at $137,143. He did not miss a milestone. He walked out 14 months before the machine turned on. Diana's father has a different version of the same blindness, and it comes from the opposite direction. 65 years old, sweater vest, reading glasses pushed down his nose, and a genuine conviction that his generation simply saved harder. He is not entirely wrong. He is also comparing a career that ran through a period when a bank account paid 8% to a career that ran through a period when it paid 0.5% for a decade. His crossover happened at a much lower dollar figure than his daughters ever will, and he never had to think about it, so he assumes there was nothing to think about. When Diana told him she had $245,000, dollars saved and still felt like she was pushing a boulder, he told her she was overthinking it. She was not overthinking it. She was 13 months from the exact point he crossed 30 years earlier without noticing, at a fraction of the balance, in a world that no longer exists. The thing about a snowball is that the first 100 yards look like nothing is happening, and the person pushing it has no way of knowing, from inside the push, how close the hill is, unless somebody hands them the number. Here is the part almost nobody says out loud. The explosion point is not a finish line. It is the moment your portfolio becomes capable of hurting you. Think about what crossing over actually means. It means your annual market return now exceeds your annual contribution, which mathematically means the reverse is also true. A bad year now costs you more than a good year of saving can repair. Diana, at $342,857, in a 20% drawdown, loses $68,571. She saves $24,000 a year. That is 34 months of maximum effort, erased in a quarter, and there is nothing she can do about it with her paycheck. Below the crossover, your savings rate is your steering wheel. Above the crossover, you do not have one. And that is the honest reason the explosion does not feel like an explosion when you reach it. It feels like vertigo, which brings us to the thing that actually separates people who finish from people who do not. It is not savings rate. It is not fund selection. It is not the number. It is whether you can stay seated during the exact period, when your behavior stops mattering and your presence is the only thing you control. Dalbar's 848 basis point gap is not made of people who saved too little. It is made of people who were there for the boring part and left before the payoff. Compounding does not reward the people who save the most. It rewards the people who are still there when the math turns. And there is a second crossover almost nobody mentions. The first crossover is when returns exceed your contributions. The second is when returns exceed your spending. For someone spending $60,000 a year, at 7%, that is $857,143. That is the number where work becomes optional. Same formula. Different input. Run it with your savings, and you get the day the market starts helping. Run it with your spending, and you get the day you get your life back. Most people spend 30 years chasing $1 million without ever noticing that $1 million was never their number. It was just a round one. So here is what to do with this before you close the tab. Take what you invested last year, the real number, not the aspirational one. Divide it by 0.07. Whatever comes out is the dollar amount where your money starts outworking you. And it is almost certainly not 100,000 and almost certainly not 1 million. Then check where you actually are against it. If you are below it, your savings rate is the only lever that matters, and every hour spent optimizing funds is an hour wasted. If you are above it, stop touching things. Your job changed from pushing to not interfering. And if you are in a 4% savings account wondering why nothing is compounding, recalculate using your real return after inflation. That single correction has redirected more retirements than any stock pick ever will. If this showed you something you did not know was happening, with your money, subscribe to Wealth POV and hit the notification bell. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day. The most important financial decision you can make is knowing the difference between a strategy that is right for you and a strategy that is right for someone else. Do the math. Make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch.